Hello and welcome back to another episode of Baking with Bob. This week is Scone Week, so I am going to teach you how to make a basic scone, sultana or cheese or cherry or anything else you'd like to pop into there. But first of all, we've got a few shout outs, so let me just check my list. Today's shout out is Michelle Roberts. I saw your cheese straws and boy did they look divine. They looked a bit cheesier than mine, in fact. I bet they went down a treat with a nice cup of coffee or a glass of wine. So well done to you for yours. And this week's recommendation or request is from Rachel and Jake. They wanted something savoury. So what better than a nice scone, whichever way you like to pronounce it. So let's get cracking. What do we need? Sorry, I'm not in shot properly. So we will need 350 grams of self-raising flour and a little bit more for dusting the side for when we are going to cut them out. Excuse me. We'll also need 1/4 teaspoon of salt. We will need 1 teaspoon of baking powder, 85 grams of butter diced up, 3 tablespoons of caster sugar, or you can use stevia or any form of replacement. I don't have caster sugar, so I'm going to use my normal granulated sugar, so it might be a little bit more grainy, but it'll still taste great. What else do we need? 175 millilitres of milk, and we will be warming that later. We need 1 teaspoon of vanilla essence extract, a squeeze of lemon juice, and 1 egg beaten up to brush the top of our scones. And then obviously your optional extras are up to you, but my recommendations are 150 grams of cheese, cherries or sultanas, and you can add a little or as much of those as you like to your scone mix that you want. Some people like it fruitier, some people don't. So what's first? First of all, as usual, let's wash our hands. Okay, hands all nice and clean. So the next step is we are going to preheat our ovens at 220 degrees Celsius, 200 if it's a fan, or gas mark 7, and the Fahrenheit I will put in below now. Don't forget as well, with this, all of the ingredients that you need are in the description. So if you don't want to keep pausing the video, you can just pause it for once, weigh all your ingredients out ready, and then you're ready to catch up and cook along with me. So let's get the oven on. So our oven is on. What is the next step? So the next step is I'm going to want you to sieve out your self-raising flour and the baking powder together into the bowl. So let's do that first. It's quite difficult to do one-handed. Let's see if I can get this patted in. There we go. So get your flour sieved through. This will help make it lighter and there'll be no clumps of flour. Okay, now that our flour is in, we're going to want to add our sugar or sugar replacement. So that goes in. And then you just want to give that a little bit of a stir up, just so it's all nicely mixed in. You don't want all the sugar on one side of your scone. You have to excuse me today, I've got a little bit of a frog in my throat. So that's mixed in. The next step is we are going to add our butter. Now, as before, when we did the cheese straws, it's a very similar method. It's best to leave your butter cubed out on the side for a few minutes, just so it can almost get to room temperature. You don't want it soft, but you also don't want it fresh out of the fridge. And then this is going to go into the flour mix, and we're going to rub together like we did before. So rub and lift until we have breadcrumbs. Also, a recommendation from Michelle, you can also use the fork. So if you've got lazy hands, or arthritis, or muscle problems, or any reason why you can't get your hands into that mixture, you can use the method with the fork. So let's pop that in. So I've got my butter in there, and I'm just going to start squashing it down through the gaps in the fork, just to start incorporating all of the flour like we did before. So I am going to fast forward this part so you can see the end result, because like I say, we've already done this on a previous video, so you can go back to the cheese straw video to watch it in a lengthier version, but for now we're going to fast forward, so I will see you in a moment. Okay, so now that that is rubbed in, it won't be as yellow or as breadcrumby as the cheese straws, but once it's all mixed in and it's all like a nice dry mixture, what we're going to do next is we are going to grab our milk, and what we're going to add to this is a squeeze of lemon juice. Now what this does, it helps to sour the milk to make it a little bit more like a buttermilk. So I'll just take the lid off that. Fresh lemon juice is advised. These acidic fake lemon juices, they do still work, but it's not as good as fresh. So just a little squeeze of that into the milk, and then we're going to pop this milk in the microwave for a 30-second blast just to warm it. We don't want it hot or to boil. Okay, so once the milk comes out of the microwave, what we're also going to add is a teaspoon of vanilla flavouring or vanilla extract into the warm milk, and then we will incorporate it. But before we do that, I want to talk to you a little bit about the flavour. Let me come in a bit closer, there we go. I want to talk to you a little bit about the flavourings. So at this point with the dry mixture, I'll just show you now, nice and floury and dry. This is the point where if you're going to flavour your scone, then you would do it now. So if you were going to make a cheese one, then you would add about 150 grams of cheese to the mixture now, mix it in, and then follow on to the next step. Same with the sultanas, same with the cherries, almonds, whatever flavour you want to make yours really. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to split my mix in half, and I'm going to do half cheese and half plain so you can see the differences. So just bear with me 2 secs while I grab another bowl. Okay, so I have my lukewarm milk here. I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract and then give that a little bit of a stir. And for the plain ones, I'm going to add about half of this mixture to my dry mix. And then I'm going to use a knife to incorporate it, to mix it all in. And you do want the dough mix to be quite wet. And what the knife does, using the knife, it stops you from over mixing it. Because if you over mix it, they'll become more like a rock cake than a scone. So I just need to add a little bit more into there. Didn't quite eyeball that one correctly. And there we go, you can see it's starting to come together now. If you find it's still a little bit dry, you can still add a little bit more. I'm going to just do a teaspoon, maybe 2 teaspoons more of that mix into there. Okay, that is about it. So if I just show you in the big camera, there we go, it's quite sticky and quite wet. So that's the plain one. I'm just going to do the cheese one now. So as you can see on the camera, there is the dry mix again, just like before. Add in your cheese or whatever flavour you're going for, and do again what I just did then. But you want to mix that cheese into the dry mix. Like I say, you don't want all your cheese on one. I've used a mixture of cheeses, as you can see, some red and some white cheese. And then I'm going to add my mix. I'm not going to pour it all in straight away because I don't want it to become over sloppy. There we go, it's starting to form. I do need some more milk in there. Pour the rest of that mixture in and give that good old crisscross style. So down, across, and then around. I find is the best way to try and get it all in. There we go. It's starting to come together. Now this mix is still a little bit dry, so all I'm going to add to that is a little splash more milk. Just to help. Because obviously I've added more ingredients into this mixture with the cheese, so you may need to add just a dash more. The other option for the cheese one as well is you can add paprika, or you can add cayenne pepper if you want to give it a bit of spice. You can use mustard powder as well, that will help enhance the flavour of the cheese. I'm going to add a little bit of cayenne pepper. Okay, so that's the cheese mixture done, and I've got the plain one done here. So there's your cheese, there's your plain. Sorry, it's a little bit dark today, one of my bulbs has blown. So the next stage after that is we are going to want to line, sorry, chop my head off. We're going to want to line a tray with some parchment paper and pop that in the oven so it's nice and hot and ready. So I'm just going to grab my bit of parchment on top of your tin into the oven. Okay, so the next part is we are going to put some flour on the side. You can just pat these down with your hands, or you can use a rolling pin. I'm just going to pat with my hands, I think. And we want it to be about 4 centimetres. And then get your cookie cutter. Where's mine? Ah, here. So, a little tip with your cookie cutter. If you use the rounded side, it will slice through the dough a lot easier, and it will also help them rise. Whereas if you use the perforated edge, or the crisscrossy style edge, like that actually squashes the batter down, and then when they go into the oven it struggles to help it rise. So they'll rise in the middle but kind of be down on the edges. So I definitely recommend using the slicey side. So let's get on with that. So like I said before, a little bit of flour on your work surface. And then tip your mixture out. Just make sure you're on the camera here. Yes, you are. And then it's already starting to rise, so pat it down both sides. Remember to turn, which I didn't do that time because it's still a little bit wet. So push your flour out. And you don't want to overwork it because you're going to turn it into a rock cake. So here we go, first one. Push down, straight down, pull out and let it fall. Push down, let it fall. Squash your mixture back together until you've used all of your mixture. Now obviously I've got a bit less mixture here than you guys because I've split mine into 2 flavours. So again, there's one. See if we can get another one up here. Yes, we can. 2, and then we should get one more out of this last little bit. Push it down, and just to shape it. There we go. So I've got 5 out of that little bit of mixture. You will probably get 8 out of full of yours. I'm now going to do the cheese one so you can see the same. So a bit of flour on the side, plonk it down, a bit of flour on the top, and press your mixture down. Turn it, press, turn it, press. And again, until you're about 4 centimetres thick, or if you want them thicker you can, you just have to cook them for longer. And there we go. So, first cheese one. There we go. Perfection. Push down. Let it fall out. The reason why I say as well let it fall out, because if you push it out with your finger, you're going to squash the top of your scone. I keep saying both because I know everybody has both. It's always been a big debate, is it a scone, is it a scone? But I can tell you what the fastest cake in the world is. Scone! Dad jokes. Here we go, 5 out of that one. So I've actually got 6 cheese and 5 plain. So I actually did quite well there. It's probably because as well, I don't know if you can notice, but I have rolled mine thinner than the 4 centimetres. And that's just because that's my preference and that's how I prefer them. But each to their own. Okay, so the final step is get 1 egg, beat it up, and then we're going to smooth the mixture on top of our scones, pop them straight into the oven for 10 minutes. So let's get egging. So if I move these into the centre so you can see a bit more, let's have a go. So, plain, oh that's a cheese one. Cheese, 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 cheese. Egg wash at the tops. Like so. Just splodge it on. There we go, and onto the cheese ones. The option you can do with the cheese ones as well is you can, once you've egg washed them, is you can add a little bit more cheese to the top, and that just gives it that bit more extra cheesy flavour. So let's grab our tin out of the tray out of the oven, which is going to be hot, so please be careful. And then onto here, straight away, we're going to pop on, like so. Make sure you leave room in between because these do rise. Can't quite fit all mine in on one tray, so I have to prepare another tray. Into the middle of the oven for 10 minutes. So I will check back in 10 minutes and see how these came out. Okay, so it's time to check to see how they're doing. They should be nice and brown, but not overly done. Let's have a look. Wow. So, can you see? Here we go. So these are our scones or scones. I think that's a cheese and that's a cheese and they're the plain there. There we go, that's some more of the cheese ones. And what we want to do is we want to take these off here and pop them onto a cooling rack. And turn your oven off. Ooh. Okay, so like I was saying, once you've taken them out of the oven, please pop them onto a cooling rack and leave them to cool. And then I like mine still slightly warm, so they're fresh, nice and soft and fluffy. And it also helps when putting your butter on because it melts into it. Or you can use your jam and your clotted cream. I do have a little tip for you. Let me just check my notes. Okay, so the battery did die. I've got my notes here. So my notes are, they are best eaten while still warm on day of baking. That's always the way with a fresh baked scone. And because they're done so quickly, you can whip a batch up anytime and you've got guests, etc. They can be frozen as well, so let cool all the way completely to room temperature. Pop it in the bag, pop it in the freezer. And you can take it out whenever you're ready for your next one. What I recommend that you do is leave it out to defrost thoroughly and then pop it into the oven on about a gas mark 3 or 160 degrees C, 140 if it's a fan, and just leave them in the oven for a couple of minutes just to warm through, then cut in half and then enjoy your nice refreshened scone. That is it for this episode of Baking with Bob. As per usual, thank you so much for watching all the way through. If you've made it this far, please don't forget to press the subscribe button, to smash that like button, and if you'd like to share your results with me, you can get me on my Instagram, which is baking.with.bob, or you can search for Baking with Bob on Facebook and join the group, and we can share tips and tricks and photos and all different recipes and suggestions and ideas. So yet again, thank you so much for tuning into my channel. It's been an absolute pleasure to teach you another little baking spectacular today, and I will see you next time.